Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's 12:30 and I know people are joining, so I'll just take a moment or two, I suppose, for people to get logged all the way through. But I will start just with the introductions at least. It is a genuinely lovely day, so hopefully some of you will be able to enjoy a little bit of it on your lunch break. So today we are doing the third part of our summer series on operational resilience. We're going to be looking at incident management and response. My name is Sandie O'Leary, and I am head of the risk advisory at calQrisk, which is obviously a company that offers governance, risk, and compliance software that I'm sure you're all very well aware of. We also offer various related services to clients across the full range of financial services, the public sector, the not-for-profits, and many other sectors. So just to let you know from the outset that this webinar is being recorded, and the slides and recording will be circulated afterwards. So, as I said, today is the third part in our series. The previous two sessions described how to establish a strong operational resilience framework through good governance, through strong risk management, and detailed business continuity and disaster recovery arrangements. Today's 30-minute session is going to look at how effective and proper, good, strong incident management and response processes also help the organizations. This is mainly focused on making sure you're in position to react quickly, to communicate clearly, and to learn from any disruption that does occur as we go through your normal operating days and life in general. So I suppose to begin with, I just want to have a quick check. Yeah, we have a good number already logged in. So as I say, I will carry on, and as I say, the full recording will be available anyway if people are delayed in joining us for one reason or another. So the core of it is really that, incidents will occur. There is no doubt. And the key difference from how one organization responds and another is that those who recover well from incidents and those who don't, the key difference is the quality of how well prepared they are. And preparation is absolutely key. You're not going to be able to anticipate everything, but it is about being as prepared as one can possibly be given the variety of different scenarios that could materialize. The reality is, as I said, that incidents will occur, and the key pillar of operational resilience is how we can respond to them. And it is similar to the other pillars of operational resilience in that preparation is obviously key through all of them. But then why in particular are we concerned with the incident response piece? Why is that important for us? Ultimately, it is an early warning system, and the idea is that it will head off a much larger incident that might have been in store for us if we hadn't been able to respond appropriately. Every incident that we experience, no matter how small, prepares us for a much more serious disruption. And we have to treat them as learning experiences from which the organization will ultimately benefit. That learning and that, I suppose, teaching opportunity internally is really important. It's also about encouraging the development of that ongoing lessons learned mindset. Everybody involved in risk management in general, and also particular around the operational resilience piece, knows that we have to be open to learning from whatever these types of incidents can teach us. And ultimately, all of it is so that everyone can sleep better at night. That's the whole purpose behind all of it, because this is serious stuff. It is the type of thing that keeps people awake at night. It is the type of thing that causes stress in the background in terms of what ifs and how would I respond or how would we react. So if anything, it is most important so that people can actually, I won't say relax, because you can never relax in the sense of not anticipating that something may or could go wrong, but it's about being as prepared as we can be so that we can be as confident as we can going into these types of situations. So I suppose, from today's session, and I would say after today's session, not at this minute, but I would say after today's session is done, please take a minute to honestly think about the next two questions I'm going to put to you. Please do try and take note of anything that comes to mind that you might want to follow up on for yourself after this session. And the first question is, in the event of a major disruptive event, are you you individually or your team, clear what your individual role would be. And if everybody took ownership of that particular aspect of it, that will also then spread out amongst, and cascade amongst the other people in your teams and in your organizations. It's really important that you start with yourself and be very clear. What would your role be? Because it might not be your day-to-day role. It could be something else that you're expected to do in a stressed situation. And the second key question is, where would you individually find the information that you need in order to deliver on that role right from the get-go, the minute something starts to go pear-shaped? The answer is not, I would ask so-and-so. The answer should be, I know exactly where I'm going to find it and how to get it myself. And if it does rely on someone else, then that's the cascade piece that you need to go to them and make sure they can get what you will need and have available to you when you need it. So there is layers to this, but start with yourself. And so after today's session, please do come back to this and make notes on what you think you might need to do to put yourselves in that best position. Regarding the information that you need, make sure that if you think you know what it is and where it is, that you're certain that it is what you're going to be looking for, and make sure that you know where to find it in that emergency scenario. So what is it that we need then to be prepared? The first thing is to think about the elements to that incident management framework. There are parts of it that will all then allow us to collectively, when you've got all the parts working together, to have a very strong response. And the first part is the policies piece. We do have to have a comprehensive suite of policies in place for any form of incident that might arise. And there are a lot of them, to be fair. It'll include the information security policy, your information systems change management, a bring your own device policy if you need one in your organization, records management, where they are, how to find them, how many copies there are, how to locate them, all those types of things. Outsourcing, what is your organization's outsourcing policy? And you'll more than likely with certain types of incidents, you'll need to know, what type of outsourced service providers are involved in the delivery of that particular area, service, whatever it might be. You'll also need your data protection policy, you'll need your access control policy, your business continuity policy, and your disaster recovery policy. Now, all of these sounds like a lot, but the vast majority of organizations will be familiar with all of these. By having them available and documented, there should be far less panic and provide everybody with more confidence about how to begin to address a problem as it starts to materialize. It's really important, I would say, if the one thing please take from today, or one of the things hopefully that you'll take from today, is that it's vital that these policy documents are clear, that they're implementable in your specific organization, and that there's no unnecessary jargon in them. Those responsible for various actions within those policies should be clearly identified. And I would say, be very careful of not using any fancy technical role descriptions that people might not all understand. Ensure that everyone who's expected to do something from these policy documents can actually see themselves in the document. If they don't recognize a title or role, then the likelihood is they're going to assume that somebody else is going to do it, that it is someone else's responsibility. And that's not a good place to be if everybody's running around expecting that somebody else has prepared for this, and it turns out it was you that was supposed to be prepared. The second part of the framework is your plans. Again, there's going to be a range of plans within your organization, or they should be, that help to prepare you for specific types of incidents. These will include things like your business continuity plan. You always, in an ideal world, want to be able to continue to operate through disruption. So your default is to begin to implement your business continuity plan. In a worst case scenario, if you're not able to continue to deliver service through an incident, you'll have to revert or move on to your disaster recovery plan. You'll also need access to your business impact analysis. You'll need your pandemic response plan. God forbid if we were in a similar scenario again, and you would need a succession plan, again, depending on certain types of incidents that might materialize. The most important thing to remember is that they need to be maintained up to date. They need to be accessible out of hours, and they need to be off network. Because if your network goes down, as often happens, particularly with cybersecurity type events, there's no point in thinking, oh, right, I knew where it was on the network, but I can't actually get onto my network. So again, the question to ask yourselves is, does everyone know who needs to know? Everyone who needs to know, do they know where these documents are stored? Can you get to them if the systems are offline? And do look at these plans from your own perspective to see if they work for your role or the role you would have to play in an incident. Do you provide constructive feedback if you look at these and you think that's not doable or that wouldn't be feasible? So again, make sure that when you read something for the first time, you put yourself in the position of having to act on it. We don't have time today in a 30-minute session to get into each different type of scenario, but my key tip would be to ensure that each plan is organization specific and detailed enough to give people confidence in their own ability to work through an incident and to begin to respond. Simply a good place to start is not enough. You do not want to be devising a plan on the go in the middle of an incident. They need to be practical tools in order to be effective. And this comes back to the preparation piece. There's a lot you can do to help work through individual scenarios. You're not going to have the answer to every possible variant, but you can put yourself in a strong position. The next part of the framework is the procedures. You need to have accessible incident-specific procedures. There's lots of those options too. The key ones that you'll need to, have prepared in advance, ideally, is a data breach procedure, a cybersecurity breach procedure, and a health and safety incident. They're kind of the most obvious ones, or the ones that happen, I suppose, most frequently. And making sure that you have those in place will again put you in a strong position. Similar to the other types of elements that we just spoke about, they do too need to be kept up to date, and they need to be accessible out of hours and off network. So the question to ask yourselves in this regard is, are all your important processes documented? Are the procedures correct, and are they up to date? When the pandemic happened, as I'm sure a lot of you will have experienced, a lot of procedures were tested and found severely wanting. It's not just an academic exercise to tick a box somewhere that someone says you need to have a procedure. And it's often not until they're actually needed that people really start to look at them, and it can be too late by then. So, one of the things you do need to think about as well is, could there be too many procedures? Can, a number of them be combined into one, so you have one main procedure with a number of sub-processes? Because you don't want to, I suppose, have too many individual documents that you're trying to build in and maintain and so on. The next part is the people element of it. When it comes to this type of scenario and an incident management situation, one of the questions to ask yourselves are all the key incident management activities resourced appropriately? And, in an ideal scenario where everything is calm and you're talking about these things without the incident actually being in play, it can seem perfectly reasonable to say, oh, we have X amount of resource available, and if something happened, they would do that, and someone else would do the other thing, and all of this would work out beautifully. However, you do have to ask yourself, are they sufficiently resourced if you were to be in a stressed scenario? Because bear in mind, things never happen at the best possible opportunity. They will probably happen at the time when you're least prepared and with the least amount of resource available to draw upon. So make sure that when you're doing your own scenario testing, for example, that you look at stressed but plausible conditions in which these types of incidents might occur and see how your resourcing appears in that situation. Make sure to ask and confirm that everybody understands what would be expected of them under stressed conditions. We all know that in most modern current jobs and occupations and businesses and organizations, whether they be private sector, public sector, a lot of it is expected, and people wear a number of different hats in a lot of organizations. And the thing to remember is, if you were in a stressed scenario, what ones would be absolutely critical, what ones would be vital, which ones could be parked maybe till later. But know that in a given scenario, you might have to perform a role that you don't do on a normal basis. So just remember to keep that in mind. If that is the case, then there are multiple areas that you might be responsible for, and particularly if it's in a slightly different scenario, like an incident, make sure that the contracts, the role descriptions, and the terms of reference are as clear as they can be about what that role might be and what you would be expected to do in those given circumstances. Make sure that if everybody or make sure that everybody who has been assigned a role in incident management has been trained accordingly. For a lot of people, it will probably be the day-to-day work that they normally do, but just maybe more under more pressure with less time to do it. But in some situations, it will be activities they don't do on a normal day-to-day basis and might only be called upon in a stressed scenario when maybe a senior manager isn't available and they have to step up into that role for the purposes of dealing with that incident because there is no other alternative at the time. So just make sure that anybody who has a clear role identified in a given scenario is aware of that and has been trained accordingly. And that does include alternates. So, the first person, the most obvious person, isn't always necessarily going to be the person who will be there on the day when this particular incident happens. So everybody needs to be clear who would have to step into their shoes in that event and make sure that they're trained accordingly. And the question for everybody involved in incident management is, is there ongoing monitoring and support? We want to make sure that if we are going to have to deal with an incident, we want to be aware of it as early as possible. We want to know who to call upon to help us to work through that particular incident and to help manage it and to make sure that the organization suffers the least from it. And if there is ongoing monitoring and support there, make sure that everybody understands who is doing that, who's doing the reporting, based on the monitoring, who's available to support individuals or teams or partnerships in a stressed scenario. So make sure that you understand what role you are going to play in an incident management situation. Do you have particular skills, for example, that might be useful in a particular type of scenario? You might be particularly IT literate. It's not maybe your day job, but it might be helpful if you can, help to roll out updates with instruction and so on in a stress scenario in your organization. You might have something like first aid skills, but that should have to be called into play, but again, might be useful. Are you a person who's calm in a crisis? Do you have good administration skills? Are you an organized and methodical person? There can be roles for all of those given, in different scenarios, in different types of incidents. So if you feel that you can contribute in any of those regards, then make that known within your team, within your organization, and try and build that into your arrangements, into your risk management framework. From a risk management perspective, we always go on about documentation. Documentation is critical, both in terms of being as prepared as we can be, in being as efficient in dealing with the incident as we can be, and in also learning then from those incidents. So it's vital to have clear incident notification guidelines and forms. If you can develop those in advance and make them as simple to complete as possible, but get whatever management information that you're going to need to help decision-making along the way and either through the incident and also after the incident, then try and do that. If you can build into that reporting and guidance an understanding of what type of incidents need to be reported, and that can be delivered, that knowledge can be delivered through role-based training, but also then how to classify it. Because, we're all aware of relatively minor incidents with not a lot of material effect, right up to complete out-and-out disasters. So the person who's going to be responsible for reporting these incidents needs to understand how to classify it so the appropriate level of response can be introduced quickly. You'll need to know who needs to be informed, and that will possibly vary depending on the type and materiality of the incident. So again, internally as an organization, make clear who needs to be informed of what type of incident and how much urgency might need to be attached to that reporting. And if it is you doing the reporting, as in the incident has been brought to your attention, it's your responsibility initially, certainly within whatever capabilities you have, to ensure that the source of that report of an incident is verified, that it is not, a fraudulent effort to actually perhaps get you to provide a backdoor into something. So just make sure that as far as you're capable of doing and understanding how to do this is an important, again, element of preparation. Depending on the incident, how would you go about verifying the source? And then from a documentation perspective, the formal follow-up via reporting of the incidents and or near misses is really important, right up to the point until it's fully corrected. So there needs to be ongoing management information and reporting, both of what happened, kind of maybe a root cause analysis, and then all the way through to business as usual at the end. Also, the key element around the documentation piece is that we're not doing all of this just to add work. We're doing all of this so that we can learn the lessons that these incidents teach us. And if we can document all the way through what happened, when it happened, who notified it, how we responded, we can look at efficiencies. We can look at maybe things that we might have missed, and we can learn those lessons. And that's absolutely critical from the incident management piece. Another part of it is the channels, communication channels and incident reporting channels. Nowadays, we have lots of them usually, and that's all based on a situation where everything is operating as normal. It could be by phone, you could have a mobile or landline, it could be via WhatsApp or an equivalent app with a dedicated emergency only chat. It could be email. Also, ideally, it would be good to have a backup email for use if your work email is disrupted. You also have meetings. People do Zoom meetings and team meetings and all of those channels that are available to us now. So the key point of this slide is to say, please remember that all channels may not be available in a stressed scenario. So you need to build in resilience within your reporting channels as well. And if you don't know the answer to this question at the moment as what's available to you, then that's something to find out after today's session. So that is a useful one to remember. One of the key parts of this element of it is the contacts, making sure you can contact the person who needs to know information in a given scenario in the throes of an incident. Some, it will be to notify them of a call to action. For others, it will be simply a notification to make them aware and that you will be coming back to them, with updates later. So a lot of organizations now have an emergency call tree through an app, or again, any of the channels, or combinations of channels we just spoke about. But remember just to keep these key criteria in mind. It should be for emergency use only. So people know that when somebody engages on this particular chat or discussion group, that there is a problem. There is something important in there. Keep it up to date in terms of the circulation list. Make sure new staff are added, leavers are taken off, and that any changes in phone number are introduced, and that somebody is responsible for administering those changes, and ideally more than one, to make sure that if somebody is unavailable or can't do it, that it is still kept up to date. Make sure that the people who are using it have clear guidance on if and when to respond to messages on those apps. Make sure the priority is not to introduce a load of unnecessary clutter with people, adding to a discussion that really isn't constructive and is just causing panic. So just make sure that the guidance is provided to the people that are going to see these communications as to how they're expected to respond. It would help if you can have some draft messaging in place beforehand. And again, you can have different alternatives drafted for different types of incidents in an ideal world. Again, you're never going to have something exact for every possible scenario, but at least if you have a strong starting point under some of the more obvious concerning incidents that might occur. So I would say to ask yourselves this question: if you were to create your own individual battle box, as they used to call them, what would be in it? Now, remember, a battle box back in the old days, and I'm around long enough for it to have been a physical filing box or filing cabinet. It can be physical now, or it can be electronic files, or it can be a bit of both. But it's the battle box itself is that secure place, that location that I mentioned earlier, that's going to be accessible, that's going to be off network, and that's going to be useful in managing incidents. I would say after this session, quickly note down any of the key documents that you would need in order to prepare your own role in the management of an incident. So, prepare your battle box, make sure you know where it is, whether it's physically, virtually, and that it's off network and accessible to you when you need it. So when you think about it, then there are a couple of different areas of responsibility in incident management. There's the management side of things, and then there's the individual employee. So if you think about it from a management perspective, it's management's responsibility to make sure that they have developed a proper incident managed framework. And think about all of those individual areas that I spoke about in the previous slides. That will guide you through the elements of that framework. It's your responsibility as management to maintain it, to make sure it's up to date, make sure the documentation that it refers to is maintained and up to date and as accurate as it can be, to allocate adequate resource. Again, it's like everything else. You do sometimes tend to think of resourcing in a best case scenario, but you really do have to think about levels of resourcing available to you in a worst case scenario. It's also important to make sure that you communicate with all stakeholders. So you need to know who the stakeholders are in the first place and then understand how you're going to communicate with them, either in the throes of an incident or after the incident, or both. And you need, as management, all the way through to encourage two-way communication so that you become aware of possible incidents, near misses that will head off actual incidents, and so on. So that's your responsibility as management. From an individual employee's perspective, it's really important that you familiarize yourself with the elements of the framework that's in your organization and to understand your individual role in it. And make sure if you see a title or a role that you kind of don't understand who that might be, because it maybe isn't a role you're familiar with or a title you might be familiar with, make sure that it isn't actually something that you're going to be expected to do. You just didn't recognize it. So just, again, make sure to avoid jargon and make sure any roles or titles are ones that can be understood within your organization. And confirm then and test your own ability to perform that particular role, including making sure that you've had the required training and that you know where the available resources are going to be. Communication is mentioned in the management, but it also refers to both sides. And it's really important that communication is strong throughout the life cycle of the incident. It can be vital but challenging in stressed conditions. So plan what you can in advance, whether that's the distributed call trees, whether it's the template messaging, whatever it might be. As much as you can do to prepare and to help you communicate quickly and efficiently without panic will be really worth your while in the long run. I just glanced there, and I will address questions certainly at the end. One of the questions just came in is, will the recording of this be made available? Yes, it will. There's another question there. How would you describe the link and scope between incidents and operational risk events? Would agree that an incident relates to a service disruption, where an operational risk event is a service disruption, but also includes non-service disruption events like an inaccurate financial report. Okay, so go back to the beginning of that. How would you describe the link and the scope between incidents and operational risk events? I think when it comes to incident management, it's just a subcategory. You know, at the end of the day, whether you're dealing with an incident that deals with the service disruption, or whether it's an incident that could have a negative effect on your reputation, whether it be with the regulator or whether it be with your stakeholders to whom your financial reports are going, I would say yes, materiality. And if you think back to what I mentioned earlier about reporting them and understanding materiality, this is where your materiality assessment is going to come into place. When you're going to report an incident, you can report it as an internal, maybe a weakness that's been identified, i.e., an inaccurate report. And that classification will be distinct from a cybersecurity breach, for example. So I would say it's about classification and coming back to making sure that your training does teach everybody to be able to distinguish between one and the other. And it is not that because they're non-material, that they're not important. They may be non-material now, but if they were to be unaddressed or not corrected, that could itself materialize into something a lot more significant over time. Hope that answers the question. I'll come back to the end, and if you want to add in another question as we go, please do. I would say, to kind of bring all of a lot of what I've said already into one slide, it's really important that an effective risk management is put in place for a whole variety of reasons. And there's massive benefits to be gained from putting your time and effort into developing your responses. It will ideally mean less stress when an incident actually occurs. And the more you can prepare, the less stress ideally, that will be on the day. It allows you to be more proactive and less reliant on simply reacting to a negative event. That's never a good place to be in. It allows more secure delegation of authority. If you understand and everybody around you in your teams and those reporting into you are clear on what's expected of them and have been trained accordingly and know where the documentation is, then it's a lot easier to assign out responsibility, particularly in stress scenarios. People are less inclined even to assign responsibility the more stressed a scenario might be. And that's not good, because then it means there's less people available to do what needs to be done. A good framework also allows active incident management roles to improve the timeliness of their response. So it can shorten the delays or the headless chicken phase where everybody's running around trying to find the bits that they need in order to deliver the role that they've been assigned. So timing can be really important, as we all know, especially in today's modern technology. The time from incident reporting to escalation can be quite short. Early intervention can reduce the scale of the impact. That's what we in risk management are trying to do. Vast majority of our lives is understanding that something will happen. And in an ideal world, we want to try and make sure that the impact is reduced or minimized. It optimizes the allocation of limited resources. Every organization, no matter what industry sector, public, private, etc., that you come from, there will be limited resources. Some have more than others, but they're still limited. And a good risk management, a good incident management framework allows you to make the best use you can of those resources. It encourages a continuous process improvement. It's that learning piece. We're going to learn from the smaller things to prevent the bigger ones. And if we do have a big one, we're going to try and learn enough not to have it happen again. It will improve your operational stability. We speak about operation resilience all the time. And by having a good incident management framework along the lines we've just discussed, it will hopefully limit your unplanned downtime. A better security posture and risk-based decisions should come out of it. You should have transparency, accountability, and ideally improved compliance. We should have clear and timely communication with all the relevant stakeholders. And that's important, again, in minimizing the panic or reputational damage that could accrue from an incident. And it does ideally help prevent unpleasant surprises. None of us want that. So the other side, the downside of having an ineffective risk management framework, can mean financial loss for your organization. It can mean inefficient operations and operational disruption. It could mean a deterioration in the quality of the service to your consumers. It could be an increase in complaints. It could even be the organization's own objectives not being managed or achieved. It could result in significant damage amongst stakeholders for your organization. And it could even result in major failures for which your organization might not recover. That's your worst case scenario. So there's a lot of upside, as I've just pointed out in the previous slides, to getting this incident management framework up and running and operational. And the downside should be more than enough to persuade you that that is worth investing in time and energy and resource. Ultimately, it is about saying, please don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Any work that you can do today to strengthen your incident management framework will help you in the long run, and it'll help to build in that learning cycle that we want from small incidents to prevent major incidents. So any other questions? I'm conscious I've done the half hour. Any other questions so far? As I said, the slides and the recording will be made available afterwards. Hopefully I answered that previous question from Ken, but if it wasn't clear, please feel free to rephrase or reframe the question, or follow up with me afterwards if there's anything more I can add to that. As you know, part 4 of our summer series is going to focus on the third-party risk element of it, and that'll be delivered by Jerry Joyce, our Chief Technical Officer at calQrisk, and that's on the 21st of July at 12:30. This particular session will focus on how to manage the risks associated with third parties and outsourced services. It's going to cover due diligence, contract considerations, and ongoing oversight, all those things that you'll need to make sure that your support, that your wider ecosystem does support resilience rather than actually weaken it. If you need anything else on this, please do reach out. We are going to have an Operation Resilience and third-party software demo on the 23rd of July at 2 p.m. 1400 hours. And that will demonstrate the kind of the software support elements that we have available to help you in your Operation Resilience and third-party risk management arrangements. So thank you all very much for having joined me today. I haven't seen any further questions. As I say, if you do think of something afterwards when you ask yourselves those questions I mentioned earlier on in the session, please do reach out. My email address is on the end slide there, and more than happy to follow up if you have any further questions. So I won't keep you from your lunch and your sunshine but I'm more than willing to answer any other questions if anything pops into your mind. I'll give it a minute or two. But if any of you do want to head off and get a bit of sunshine, please do. And thank you for coming today, despite the lovely day.